Donnie Walker, just hanging out. Just got back from having some dinner. Went to the local parking lot up by Rutherford Mall tonight. Seen a little car show. Seen some beautiful cars. Now back here, just hanging out at the house. And just thought I'd talk a bit about one of the videos I just did on 550s. Husqvarna 550s, 550 Mark II, Mark III, whatever you want to call them these days. Great little saws. Been a lot of misconceptions about it and a lot of problems with it though too. So that's why some people have had great luck and some people have had bad luck. From the beginning of those saws, they were pretty good. Yes, we had a few issues, but out of the maybe 10 out of 100, maybe they had a little bit of an issue, but wasn't that bad. Husqvarna stood by them very well with warranty and designing new parts for them as they've been having the problems they've had. The new ones are much better, but I have had a couple of issues with them as well. But I'm going to tell you the main issues we have had with the normal 550s, the first version, I should say. The first version, we had some seals coming out, bearing problems, and I know I was trying to help a fella out in the east at a dealership in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia somewhere. He sent me a whole bag of bearings and stuff, and he wasn't getting any help from Husqvarna, but he finally did get some help, I believe. I think I steered him in the right direction, and from what I can see on those bearings, man, like a lot of people badmouth nylite bearings and they think steel bearings are better, steel cage bearings are better, but the nylite cage ones really are the best when they're when they're good ones and they're manufactured properly. The ones they had in the 550s, yes, they are built for Husqvarna exclusively, if I can say that right. They make them for Husqvarna. You can't buy them from a jobber place and replace them. So, from what I've seen, most of the problems was the cages separating, the plastic cages, and it pushes the seal out, then they suck air, and then they overfuel themselves because they're auto-tuned, so it self-adjusts itself. Then they don't run right, they have no power. So that was a main issue. Then if one of the balls got out of the cage area and that stuff got up in all the flashing gets up into the piston or ring, and that messes up your piston and your bore as well. Most of the time though, if a bearing would go with a cage like that, it started to suck air and it wouldn't run right, and a person wouldn't be able to rebuild it. I believe that's why Husqvarna now offers short blocks as a very reasonable price compared to rebearing and resealing a bottom end of a Husqvarna these days in the 500 series and some of the 300 series. You can buy short blocks at such a reasonable price that you basically don't even bother taking them apart. I'm very good at redoing bottom ends on all these saws. I've been doing them for years. One year when 372s were getting a recall in Canada, I remember helping Husqvarna out, and they sent me like hundreds of Husqvarna 372s, and they sent me these short blocks for 372s, and I changed them all so they had the new updated crankcase. They paid me quite a good sum for doing each one of them, but that was the way to go. So when they are offering this again on the 500 series saws and the 300 still, you can't beat it. By the time you try to pay a mechanic to rebearing a crankcase or crankshaft or bottom end, I should say, it takes a long time. You got to take it all apart, clean it, take every little part out, heat the cases up, get the bearings in, press them together, use all the proper tools if you have them. If you don't, use the old method that I use, make the tools or heat them up, get the bearings in, and press them together on an arbor press, and away you go. But what I'm getting at is, like the 550 ones for sure, they had their issues, and so did the 562s. I actually had a couple of brand new 562s from the factory. I sold at my dealership, and they never really ran from the new. Like they were trouble right away. Um, so that was kind of disappointing, and I tried everything on those, and at that time I didn't know a lot about auto tunes and how to test them and figure that out. But I do know now with any of the auto tune type saws, 550s, it doesn't matter what model it is. If it's an auto tune Husqvarna or even an MS M-Tronic still, you have to learn how to do compression tests and air and vacuum tests, because you got to remember all these new saws with their ignitions and their systems will actually override an air leak or a lean condition getting it fuel, so it compensates for it. For sure, that's a good thing because it won't blow up, but they still blow up because lately in the last 2 years I've seen such terrible bearings and stills. The 261s are an awesome little saw, but I've had a lot of guys that use them for spacing and tree work where they're really revving them high, and some of their workers are not keeping a good sharp chin. They're buzzing the crap out of them, revving them way too high and not cutting properly and keeping them cool. So they're blowing bearings out of them, and that's one of the reasons why the small still saws have bearing problems. Husqvarna ones with the 550s and 562s, it's not. I don't see bearings really failing. I don't see like chrome coming off the balls or the outer wear of the race wearing. It's the cages pushing out out the seals. That's what it is. They've done a lot of changes. They try to protect that on the 550, I believe, or the 562. They got now a little cover that goes over the seal under the flywheel to hold the seal in. So I'm like, right away, I'm thinking, why would they have that? There's no reason for that. It's not like it's a dust problem or dirt problem. Saws years ago all never had that, and it worked fine when it was seal on crank type sealing, not seal on bearing type sealing. And that's my biggest thing right now with that type of system. The seal on a bearing system is not a good idea, because you think about it, the wear of the crankshaft between the inner race of the bearing and the crankshaft, they end up getting play after a while and suck air, and they move more. So it's like, obviously the seal wears more. It's just not a good system. It works, but it has a lot of problems. So overall, like I did that video with the 550 and the 550 Mark II. Well, no, it was the 550 Mark II. They're a great saw. The 261 is great too. And so is the Echo, like 5.1, I think you call it, or something like that. Those 50cc ones, I'm sure Dalmore's got one that's around the same size. That's probably a ripper too. But all these new manufacturers with these sizes of saws, that's their biggest class of saw in the world. So they work really heavy on that 50 to 60cc range, because that's the world dominant type of saw. We're here on the West Coast in these areas. We all been concentrating on these big displacement saws for years. And you know what? It's important to us because that's our living and that's our life. Working on that big stuff and dealing with that. But these days, I deal a lot more with tree service people and people all over the world. And I'm trying to help people out with everything. So if you have any problems with stuff like that or got any questions on those 550s, definitely, if you don't have a very good dealership around you, and you've watched my video, just explain to them that, yes, tell them, please do a compression test, do an air vacuum test, and check your error codes on your download of the Husky or even still. And that gives them a kind of an idea what's wrong, but you still need to be a mechanic. That's why you need to do the air vacuum test, compression test, look at the carburetor. The screen could be full in the fuel pump side. None of these brand new fuel filters and all this stuff is perfect. You can still get particles in your carburetor, all sorts of different things, right? So you still got to be a mechanic. You can't rely on the computer to tell you error codes what's wrong with it. It'll give you an idea, but it ain't going to tell you the truth. So any mechanics out there, any homeowners or users or people, you want to know that stuff, give me a comment. I'll help you out with it. Or go into your local dealer and explain to them you want to have this done and that done properly. And if they don't know how to do it, maybe they can contact me about it. But that's the way I do it. I do it properly. Like I teach the mechanics I've taught and myself. You got to do it from the right way. You still got to, think of the simple stuff. Simple stuff. Is it getting fuel? Is it getting spark? Does it have compression? That's all I got to say tonight. I've had a long day. I got my original Walker Saw Shop hat on. Eddie Braun running our racing saw, an old Mac 101 kart engine with probably 2 carburetors my dad had on it. But been a good day. I did some saws this morning. Bit of work at the daycare for Shelly. And ran that 2100 race saw. I got it fixed up for a friend of mine, Steve Valentine there. He's going to go to Castle, BC this weekend and run it. I made a couple cuts with it, got it tuned in right. I didn't originally build the saw, but I adapted a Yamaha KT100 carburetor to it yesterday. Fixed his intake leaking problem. Built a throttle system for it. Oh my God. I did that all in like 2 days. But today I got it to idle properly, fast idle, start up for the restart properly. So it'll actually start when you go do your cut. And it went through 2 cuts without dying out. It worked perfect. So I hope he has a good time with it, and everyone else at the Castle Logger Sports, and the next one in Port McNeil. Maybe I'll have time to go to it. Actually, I got a 3120 I'm going to build next week. I got some pipes coming from CPI Racing there, and be talking about those real soon. So keep your saw in the wood, stick in the ice, rubbing the road. Have a great night. Bye.